Scott Smith. Scott Smith was losing. Not close. Losing. Pete Sell had cracked him with a body shot that folded him in half at UFC Fight Night 6 in November 2006. Smith was on the canvas. His face was twisted in pain. His hand was on his stomach. Sell walked in to finish him because the fight was already over. Everyone knew it. The crowd knew it. The commentators knew it. Smith was about to get stopped. Then Smith threw one punch off his back foot while still wincing from the body shot and caught Sell flush on the chin. Sell dropped face first, out cold. Smith stood over him holding his stomach because the body shot pain had not even worn off yet. The fight ended with the winner still recovering from the shot that was supposed to end him. That is the comeback that defined an era. You can be 1 second away from losing and one punch away from winning at the same time. Scott Smith proved it. Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva was getting beaten by Chael Sonnen for 4.5 rounds at UFC 117 in August 2010. Not edged, not nudged, beaten. Sonnen took him down in the first round and kept him there. Took him down again in the second. Took him down in the third. Took him down in the fourth. Silva was on his back absorbing punches and elbows for 23 minutes of a 25-minute fight. The greatest middleweight in UFC history was about to lose his title to a wrestler nobody thought could even get close to him. Then, with 1 minute and 50 seconds left in the fifth round, Silva caught Sonnen's arm. He threw his legs up. He locked in a triangle. Sonnen tapped. The greatest title reign in UFC history stayed alive because Silva refused to lose even when the fight was already lost. 23 minutes of getting beaten. 2 minutes of being a champion. That is who Anderson Silva was. That is why people called him the greatest. The fight you were watching was already decided. He decided it again at the end. Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar got dropped in the first round against Gray Maynard at UFC 125 on New Year's Day 2011. Then he got dropped again. Then again. Maynard knocked him down 4 separate times in the first round. Edgar should have been finished. Most fighters get knocked down once and they are done. Edgar got knocked down 4 times and walked back to his corner at the end of the round like nothing happened. Then he came out for round 2 and started boxing. He used his speed, he used his footwork, he outpointed Maynard for the next 4 rounds and the fight ended in a draw. Edgar kept the title. The first round was one of the most one-sided rounds in UFC championship history. The next 4 were a different fight entirely. Then they fought again at UFC 136. Same thing. Maynard dropped him in the first. Edgar came back. This time Edgar finished him by TKO in the 4th round. 2 title fights against the same opponent. 2 near finishes in the first round, 2 comebacks. Frankie Edgar built his entire career on the idea that the first round does not count if you survive it. Nobody embodied that more. Cheick Kongo. Cheick Kongo got punched in the face. Then he got punched in the face again. Pat Barry was a former kickboxer with knockout power in both hands, and at UFC Live in June 2011, he was unloading on Kongo against the cage in the first round. Barry dropped him with a left hook. Kongo got up. Barry dropped him again with another left hook. Kongo got up again. He was barely conscious. His legs were stiff. His eyes were not tracking. Barry walked in to finish the fight. Kongo threw one right hand from somewhere outside reality and connected flush on Barry's chin. Barry dropped face first. The fight was over. Kongo had been hit cleaner than Barry. He had been dropped twice. He had no business winning. He won anyway. The replay still does not look real. 2 seconds before the punch, Kongo could barely stand. 2 seconds after the punch, Barry could not stand at all. That is the kind of finish that does not happen in real fights. Cheick Kongo made it happen. Travis Browne was getting kicked in the leg. That was the entire fight. Alistair Overeem at UFC Fight Night in August 2013 was landing hard kicks to the leg and body, and Browne was wincing every time. By the middle of the first round, Browne was hurt. He was leaning against the cage. He was holding his side. Overeem walked in for the kill and threw a knee. Browne caught it and threw a front kick that connected flush on Overeem's chin. Overeem dropped. Browne swarmed with elbows and the fight was over. 20 seconds earlier, Browne could barely move. Then Overeem got greedy. Then Overeem was unconscious. The lesson is the same as it always is at heavyweight. The fight is never over until somebody is unconscious. Browne understood that better than anyone one on that night. Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler was bleeding everywhere. Rory McDonald had broken his nose in the first round of their welterweight title rematch at UFC 189 in July 2015. Then McDonald started pulling ahead on the scorecards. By the end of the fourth round, McDonald was winning the fight, and Lawler's face was a horror movie. Blood was running down his chest, his nose was crooked, his lip was split open. The fight was supposed to be over because nobody fights through that much damage and wins. Then between the fourth and fifth rounds, the camera caught the moment that defined the fight. Lawler stared across the cage at McDonald. McDonald stared back. They both stood there bleeding and exhausted and refusing to look away. The fifth round started. Lawler walked forward. He landed a straight left that broke McDonald's nose worse than his own. McDonald collapsed face first. The fight ended. Lawler kept the title. The image of those two men staring at each other between rounds is one of the most iconic in UFC history because it told you what was about to happen before it happened. Lawler was not going to lose. He decided that before the round started. Diego Sanchez was losing to Clay Guida for the first round and a half of their fight at the Ultimate Fighter 9 finale in June 2009. Guida was taking him down. Guida was controlling him. Guida was out-wrestling him in a fight that Sanchez was supposed to win on his feet. Then halfway through the second round, Sanchez landed a right uppercut on the chin that dropped Guida flat. Guida hit the canvas hard. Sanchez should have finished him. He swarmed with strikes, but Guida survived. Then Guida came back, and the fight became one of the most violent three-round wars the UFC had ever seen. Sanchez won by split decision. The uppercut is the moment everyone remembers. One punch turned a fight he was losing into the fight that won Fight of the Year. Sanchez built a Hall of Fame career on moments like that. He was never the most skilled fighter in any matchup. He was always the one who would not stop coming forward and always the one who could find one shot to change everything. Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis was getting controlled by Charles Oliveira on the ground at UFC on Fox 21 in August 2016. Oliveira is one of the best grapplers in lightweight history. He had Pettis in a guillotine choke that looked tight enough to finish him. Pettis was turning red. His eyes were closing. Then Pettis spun out of the choke into top position, and Oliveira immediately went for an armbar. Pettis defended. Oliveira transitioned to a triangle. Pettis defended again. Oliveira locked up another guillotine. Pettis spun out again. 3 submission attempts in less than 2 minutes. Then Pettis caught Oliveira in a guillotine of his own and squeezed. Oliveira tapped at 1 minute and 49 seconds of the second round. The fight was a grappling exchange where Pettis was losing every single position until the moment he was winning the fight. That is what makes it a comeback. Pettis was almost finished 3 different ways. He still walked out with the submission win. Oliveira would go on to become a UFC champion and one of the most dangerous submission artists the lightweight division has ever seen. Pettis caught him on a night where survival turned into victory. Justin Gaethje was losing to Michael Johnson for the entire first round at UFC on Fox 26 in July 2017. Johnson was faster. Johnson was sharper. Johnson was hitting Gaethje with combinations that would have stopped most fighters. Gaethje was eating shots and absorbing punishment in his UFC debut against an opponent everyone thought he was not ready for. By the end of the first round, Gaethje's face was already swelling. His nose was busted. His mouth was open. He looked finished. Then he came out for round 2 and the fight changed forward. Johnson started slowing down. Halfway through the second round, Gaethje caught Johnson with a knee that crumpled him. Then he finished him with strikes on the ground. Performance of the night. Fight of the night, the kind of debut that announces a star. Gaethje absorbed more damage in 15 minutes than most fighters absorb in their entire career. He came back from a one-sided first round to finish a top 10 lightweight in his first UFC fight. That is what put him on the map. Donald Cerrone. Donald Cerrone was getting outboxed by Yancy Medeiros in the first round at UFC Fight Night in February 2018. Medeiros had the power. Medeiros had the timing. Medeiros dropped Cerrone with a clean punch. and the fight looked like it was about to end early. Cerrone got up. Medeiros walked in to finish him. Cerrone caught him with a counter that turned the fight around in one exchange. By the end of the first round, Cerrone was the one walking forward and Medeiros was the one bleeding. Cerrone finished him by TKO. In the first round of a fight he had been losing 2 minutes earlier. That kind of comeback was the entire Cerrone career in one fight. He was never the safest fighter. He was never the most cautious fighter. He was the guy who would get hit, get dropped, and then find a way to finish you anyway because he had the experience and the toughness to survive moments most fighters do not survive. Cowboy lost a lot of fights because of how he fought. He also won a lot of fights for the exact same reason. Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya was losing to Kelvin Gastelum at UFC 236 in April 2019 in a fight for the interim middleweight championship. Gastelum dropped him in the second round with a clean left hand. Then Gastelum dropped him again. Adesanya was bleeding from cuts above and below both eyes. His face was swelling. He was behind on the scorecards going into the 5th round. He needed a finish or a dominant round to win the title. He delivered both. The 5th round was one of the greatest title fight rounds in UFC history. Adesanya started landing combinations that broke Gastelum down. He hurt him with a knee. He dropped him with a punch. Gastelum survived but barely. Adesanya won the round so decisively that he won the fight on the scorecards. Interim middleweight champion. The man who was getting outpointed and outlanded for 4 rounds turned the fight around in 5 minutes because he refused to lose. Adesanya would go on to unify the title and reign over the middleweight division for years. The Gastelum fight is the one that made it possible. He won that title with 1 round of perfect striking after 20 minutes of getting beaten up. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor was losing to Nate Diaz for almost the entire first round of their rematch at UFC 202 in August 2016. Diaz was applying the same pressure that had finished McGregor 5 months earlier. He was eating McGregor's shots and walking forward. McGregor was already breathing hard. The first fight was about to repeat itself. Then McGregor changed the strategy. He started chopping Diaz's lead leg with kicks. He started moving laterally instead of standing in the pocket. He started picking his shots. Diaz kept walking forward, but his legs were getting destroyed. By the 3rd round, Diaz was hurting. By the 4th, McGregor was firing combinations and getting out before Diaz could counter. McGregor won by majority decision. It is a comeback because it was a comeback inside a career. McGregor had been finished by Diaz 5 months earlier and was on the verge of being finished again in the first round. He adjusted in real time and won a 5-round war against the man who had broken him. That fight did 1.6 million pay-per-view buys and stands as one of the greatest fights in UFC history. McGregor lost the first round and won the war. Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards was losing the welterweight title fight to Kamaru Usman at UFC 278 in August 2022. He had won the first round on most scorecards, but Usman dominated rounds 2, 3, and 4 with wrestling. Edwards could not stop the takedowns. He could not generate offense from his back. By the start of the 5th round, Edwards was behind on every scorecard and needed a finish. There were 56 seconds left in the fight. Edwards faked a body kick and threw a left high kick that connected flush on Usman's jaw. Usman went rigid. His arms locked. He fell backwards like he had been unplugged. Edwards landed one more punch on the ground, and the referee jumped in. Leon Edwards was the welterweight champion. He had been losing for 24 minutes. He won the fight in the final 56 seconds with 1 kick. There has never been a comeback like it in UFC championship history. Not the timing, not the stakes, not the way Usman went out. Edwards beat the man who had beaten him 7 years earlier. He beat one of the most dominant champions in welterweight history. He did it with the last meaningful exchange of a fight he was about to lose. Some comebacks happen in the middle of a fight. The greatest ones happen with seconds left. Leon Edwards has the greatest one of all, Max Holloway. Max Holloway was tied with Justin Gaethje on the scorecards heading into the final round of their BMF title fight at UFC 300 in April 2024. Both men had given everything for 20 minutes. Holloway had used volume and footwork. Gaethje had used leg kicks and power. The fight could go either way. With 10 seconds left in the 5th round, Holloway pointed at the ground in the middle of the cage. He was telling Gaethje to stand and trade. 2 of the toughest fighters in UFC history walked to the center bartender and started swinging. Holloway threw a right hand that landed flush. Gaethje fell face first. He was unconscious before he hit the canvas. The fight ended with 1 second left. The arena erupted. The knockout is the most replayed moment in UFC history because it was not just a finish. It was a finish that did not need to happen. Holloway was tied on the scorecards. He could have coasted. He could have run out the clock and won the BMF title on points. Instead, he pointed at the center of the cage and asked for a war he did not need. He won the war. He won the title. He gave the sport one of the greatest moments it has ever seen. That is what makes it the craziest comeback on this list. The fight was even. It was about to end. Holloway turned the final 10 seconds into a knockout that nobody who watched it will ever forget.